That would be definitely fresh yeast, and again, the fresh yeast, as you've seen in the presentation, has a limited shelf life. So personally, I think you have to, depending on the size of your bakery, if you get your yeast from your bakery supplier, please work with your team member from the bakery supplier that they ship you the freshest yeast you're receiving. Usually fresh yeast shipments are done weekly, sometimes 2 or 3 times, depending on the region and on the demand. But fresh yeast is definitely the solution. And I would ensure that the yeast is not older than 2 weeks. Because a microorganism, as we know, is like human beings. When we age, it's slowing down. There's the same thing happens with the microorganism, the Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And so coordinate that you really have the freshest yeast possible. But that's not the only success on frozen dough production. There's other parameters, and offline, whoever asked a question can contact me, and I would be happy to provide further information.
Yeah.
Actually, what some people actually don't really know, to answer the question, yes, we do. But I also would like to emphasize that actually Lesaffre has been the first company in the world to offer the European market active sourdoughs, live active sourdoughs. We have now 5 here in North America. At this point, we only provide devitalized sourdoughs, different based on different cereals, could be from buckwheat, spelt, rye, wheat. So yes, we do offer a variety. Again, you can reach us offline, and we can explain that a little bit further.
Yeah, that's true. That sourdough process is really, let's say, quite complex. People can do their own spontaneous sourdough. It takes a lot of time. It takes days and weeks. Also, for the consistency, it has some risk because microorganisms are in the air. This is a live microorganism. There is a wild one, and we didn't say that during presentation, but of course, obviously, for our food industry, it's important to have, let's say, the safety and the safe, the good one, the good microorganism. We heard time to time that some bacteria are not good. And that's why usually people also try to standardize and to use some microorganism from the industry, being sure that they can start their own sourdough properly. This is really important. And yeah, what Ralf mentioned, we have a live dough range concerning sourdough from dry, ready to use, or liquid, ready to use, to different ferment as well. But yes, it depends the goal and the objective.
Yeah, it also depends where the question came from, which part of the world. In Europe, for example, we provide sourdough starters, active sourdoughs, as mentioned, devitalized sourdoughs, and then actually even also liquid sourdoughs infused with aromas like certain different flavor aromas into it. And this is something nobody else offers, especially in the European market. For example, if you convert, just to give you an example, if you convert, let's say somebody is using 1 kilogram of fresh yeast, the equivalent on cream yeast would be about 1.7 kilogram of cream yeast. The 1 kilogram of dry yeast, the 1 kilogram of fresh yeast converted into instant yeast would be about 333 grams, or 33%. Again, it really depends on what kind of products. It's just the guidelines. So can it be converted? Absolutely. But there's a little bit more to it that we need to have more specifications, because going from cream yeast into instant yeast, we have done that. We converted industrialized bakeries into instant yeast because logistics is a very big factor for shipping cream yeast. So let's say a tanker truck breaks down for whatever reason, mechanical, or is stopped because of weather. We encourage all our liquid yeast users. We give them also advice and training on how to use instant yeast in case there is an emergency on receiving green yeast. And that, as we all know, we see it on a daily basis. The environment has changed from the weather perspective. It is always good for every industrialized bakery to have a contingency plan in place to use instant yeast if needed. That's our personal recommendation.
And I would just second that those conversion charts are a starting point, and you typically need to do some testing to figure out the exact conversion for the product and the process that you're making. We've done this a number of times in our lab, and it's always a great place to start, but we always need to refine that before we find the exactly right conversion for what we're trying to do. Flavor, aroma, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we touch a bit of that. This is really important. Yeah, of course, obviously, we talk about yeast and ferment. This is really important. First of all, to have the right yeast or the right ferment according recipe and application. Don't use the same yeast in a very high sugar dough or in a lean dough baguette recipe. Also, I think Ralf mentioned that about the frozen process. This is really important to have the right yeast for that kind of application. So recipe and process will define what type of ferment. And after that, the parameter that will impact the activity of the ferment, activity of the yeast, will be temperature. I think the bakers knows that, okay, going on the very low temperature, it slows down fermentation. Going on high, it increase and it make it faster, the fermentation. The time, obviously, time, temperature are key, but also the water. And as I said in the recipe, some key elements like sugar and salt really impact the fermentation by disturbing, let's say, the activity of ferment, the activity of yeast. That's the case also for the preservative, like calcium propionate, which is used in different products. So these elements, parameters, time, temperature, component of the recipe are really key to impact the fermentation process. So this is to take in consideration, and also to, as you mentioned, I think Dr. Jayne, is that like the test, the trial can also highlight that.
It's definitely fresh yeast. Again, for all types of processes, again, instant yeast is generally not suited for frozen dough production. Now, the definition of frozen dough production. So I want to be here speaking as a baker. You can use instant yeast and make a dough and put it into your freezer in a craft bakery. But if you're aiming to looking for a shelf life of 3 months and beyond, you definitely need to use fresh yeast. Talking about the right environment during the freezing process, some of the yeast cells being destroyed as well. So frozen dough producer increasing the amount of yeast compared to if they would use a fresh production. So that answer goes also a little bit into the previous question, what impacts the yeast. So frozen dough production will impact the activity of the yeast. So yeah, fresh yeast is the best solution for a general production. Is it from fresh baked, retarded, par baked, frozen, and freezer to oven, to name a few.
Yeah, that's really question that I think is quite trendy at the moment. Sourdough, there are many people doing that even at home. And this is most of them, they will try with a spontaneous fermentation because of the wild microorganism. So sometimes it works, sometimes not, depending of what we have, what kind of environment. And it touched a bit the slide, like the bread making is very simple ingredient, but it can be also lots of science if we want to control and if we want to monitor what we are doing, if we want to understand. So sourdough, just at that question, how to make it? Yeah, it's a substrate and ferment, so it can be just like some people doing with flour or flour in general, wholemeal flour, or juice, things like that, like yogurt. But also, I think from, let's say, when we want to control and being sure that the fermentation will go well, and also to make it on a more simple way. That's how in Lesaffre we offer this leavened dough range from starter culture, as Ralf mentioned, from a live sourdough in different countries, or ready to use sourdough. We have now a different facility, different production site using fermentation expertise to produce the sourdough. So this is also done, of course, in the bigger scale, but it's done like you could do in your kitchen or in your small bakery, like using raw material, flour, wholemeal flour, and ferment, and then generate sourdough, which take a lot of time, many days, refreshment. So it's a specific process for that. If some of you have interest, do not hesitate to reach out our teams for different solution. Of course, we can offer the right product or the leavened dough product ready to use, but also we offer services and advices if you want to manage your own production. So that's the way that we try to work in the Lesaffre teams. Hope it answers to the question.
Excellent. I think it does. Well, we are coming up to the end of the hour here. So, of course, thank you everyone for signing on and learning more about yeast and fermentation today. And thank you to Lesaffre for sponsoring this webinar, and especially Michael and Ralf for sharing your expertise. It has certainly been enlightening. Just a reminder that this recording will be available next week on the Baker Academy page. And of course, any questions that weren't answered today during the live webinar, please feel free to ask those additional questions in the Baking Industry Professionals Facebook group and LinkedIn group as well. So with that, thank you everyone. And that's the end of our seminar.